Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Jess the Love Coach podcast. Super excited. Today's episode is going to be a recording of an Instagram live that I did with my friend Sacha, where we talk about love, sex, and relationships. Very excited that we could make this happen today.
I know. I'm so happy that it worked out. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right. Well, I suppose we can give a really short background intro before we get started, since we don't have too much time today. But just for everyone out there, Sacha and I actually met 12 years ago. We worked on a farm in California doing work exchange, like doing WOOFing. And we've managed to stay in touch over the years, and we've had a lot of similarities in our path, from our childhood, growing up in really religious households, and then now both being coaches and all of these things. So we decided to get together and talk about things that we really love.
That's awesome. I find people who you meet while you're traveling, there's a unique connection that you'll never forget that time that we had together, right? And it keeps you connected. So I'm grateful to be here now after all that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, right now I'm in Thailand and Sacha is in Canada. So it's evening time for her and it's very early for me, 6 a.m. So yeah, it's another cool thing about the modern world, right? That we can stay connected as we are all around the world, and we can show up and be at the exact place at the exact same time.
It's amazing. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jess. So do you think we should dive right into the conversation?
Yeah, why not, right? If you feel ready.
Yeah, so Jess and I reconnected recently, and I've been going through a lot of personal transitions and a breakup in the last month and kind of the last couple of years, an ending of a long-term partnership. So a lot of relationship topics. And I think when you and I connected, we were like, wow, there's actually quite a bit of overlap in our personal lives and in the journey that we've been on. And myself, my primary focus is emotional freedom technique. So tapping is something that I share with the world, and part of emotional freedom technique is this somatic therapy. So looking at the body and where our defense patterns are, which we all have. And it's fascinating. I just had 2 in-person clients, but really on a high level, it's we all got hurt as kids in various different ways, and we developed defenses against protecting ourselves from feeling what felt intolerable to feel, right? So we have these different ways, and there's different layers of defenses. And so, I think this week in particular, I'm fascinated how much people are wanting real connection. It feels like more than ever right now. It's people are tired of these old ways of being. They're tired of the masks that they're wearing. They're tired of the fake conversations, and there's you feel stuck, I think, a lot of people, because it's you don't want to be fake, you don't want to be inauthentic, but yet you don't really know how to uncover why you're doing that or why you feel stuck. Yes. And one of my mentors, I shared an Instagram post this week, Jess, that was the extent of the defense is an equation, so it's equal to the extent of the pain. Yes. And the extent of the wound that we experience, right? So I think it's just an important first starting point. It's we have these defenses because we're protecting pain. That's very real. Yeah. And needs to be it needs to be held with care. And so a lot of the work that I do in the world is it's been my own journey, and I'm still on my own journey, but it's how can we look at the places that the wounds inside of us, and actually feel through them to move through our defenses, to be more of ourselves, which I think is what we all really want.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of the thing, is just that, this is a big message that I'm sharing is about authenticity and about being yourself and feeling, comfortable to face those fears. And, this is why our work aligns so well. And I think, like, what kind of brought us together, I think, to do this was like our shared passion for, for inner freedom for ourselves. This has been our own personal journey, and this is what we're here to help others through as well, is to find the emotional freedom, like you said. And I think that's kind of all encompassing in this internal freedom, so that we can feel free to be our true selves, free to be vulnerable, which is what gives us those deeper connections. And I totally agree that I do feel like, right now in the world, more people are craving more authenticity, they're craving more realness. Like, even on social media, like the curated, kind of picture perfect Instagram, it's kind of starting to shift away from that. People want more realness, more of like, who are you, and more showing up. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad to be here today. And yeah, I'm really stoked about today because when Sacha and I had a call the other week and we caught up after 12 years, there was a lot to unpack there and stuff. And Sacha was resonating with some of the content that I was posting because of the relationship reality check workshop that I did last week. And then she shared with me something that just like it perfectly put into words my lived experience, and I really believe a lot of people's lived experience. And I'm really excited for you to dive more into it. But yeah, she mentioned this theory within her work called the heart pelvis connection. And it really, I mean, I want to let you go into it, Sacha, but for me, I think what really stuck with me is the fact that I've been in like a lot of relationships where, well, not a lot, but I've been in one long-term relationship specifically where there was so much love and it was really heart-centered and really focused, and we had a very loving relationship, but there maybe wasn't quite that like sexual chemistry or that sexual passion there. And then I've had other partners where there was more sexual chemistry or more sexual passion, but there wasn't quite like the safety and the love there, which you were saying that's been your experience as well. So I'm really excited to dive into that.
I love how the birds are like, yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, the sun is rising right now. It's sunrise, so nature is very
so awesome.
very active out there.
Very active. It's amazing. Yeah. So this theory is part of the somatic work that I practice, and it really impacted me when I learned it because, as you know, I was raised Jehovah's Witness, which is quite a strict kind of sect of Christianity. And I picked up on an early age, like a lot of shame, especially around sexuality, which I think is something that's very resonant to a lot of people. Like people, I even like when I bring this to the students in my work, like it's hard for people to talk about their experience with their own eroticism or just like to talk about sex, right? It's like it's still very taboo, and it's bizarre because it's something that's a part of all of our lives as adults. So yeah, this kind of concept of when our sexuality started to come online. So we are inherently sexual beings, right? We come from sex. All of us came from sex in some form or way. And as children at around age like 3 or 4, our sexual natural eroticism starts to come online. And so you might have children of your own, or you might have little ones around you. But I remember from a young age seeing little ones like rub pillows against themselves, or like I was a swimmer when I was young, kind of like rubbing up against pool jets. Like it's at a very innocent young age that we're starting to discover that we feel pleasure in our genitals. And it's like, oh my gosh, like there's all this energy and I don't know what it is. And as children, like we're just like, whoa, like there's all this energy. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's good or bad or right or wrong, as it isn't. It's just energy. And we usually bring that energy to our parents in some way. So our parents will see, us kind of pleasuring ourselves in some way. And with our parents, for most of the time, there's a heart connection. I would say like all of the time, unless in very rare circumstances, because you're being nourished by your parents, you're being held by your parents. So you have this already established like deep heart connection with your parents. And so when the pelvis starts to come online, a lot of the time there's some sort of shock or some sort of trauma, for lack of better words, that happens in the child's nervous system. And you can imagine like a 3 or 4-year-old is like very sensitive to what's happening in the environment, right? It's kind of like we're learning about life. So this is where a split of energy happens a lot of the time, where the pelvis gets brought to the parents and there's some form of like shock. And it's like, it's very interesting because it shows how sexual trauma is passed down generationally, because whatever the parents' experience with sex is going to get brought to the surface in that moment of just like, maybe they're like afraid of being a bad parent, afraid of like, they don't, it's inappropriate, or you can imagine. And I've heard dads tell this story, and it's like maybe they're afraid of that they do feel some arousal because their child is like this beautiful little child. And when you look at society, right, it's like we're obsessed with youth. So there's like all this energy, and perhaps the parents feel some sort of arousal even perhaps. And like they want to push that down because we're taught that that's very bad and very wrong. And so the child is picking up on whatever happens in that moment. And in some circumstances, perhaps it's met with too much energy, and perhaps there's a lot of pelvis energy from the parents to the child, which in some cases people learn that like it's safe for me to have my pelvis, but I don't have my heart.
Yes.
And in my case, and I think in a lot of people's cases, it's like, oh, I'm allowed to have my heart. I'm a good girl. I can be a good girl. It's like, I'm going to love, but I cannot, like, fuck. Like, it's like that energy is not allowed. And I think, like, in a lot of women, I feel like that's where, like, for me, I know it's like rage gets cut off. Passion gets cut off. It's not really about sex. It's about the energy of the pelvis.
Yes, 100%.
So there's that splitting, right? And a lot of my work has been around like reconnecting that within myself. And for years, as we talked about, it's like I didn't even know. I think that's a big thing to mention too, is that like I didn't even know what that meant, that like pelvis energy. So it's like I kind of felt that something was off, but it's not like, I don't think a lot of people have an understanding of the fact that there might be an energetic cut off.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a really good point to make. And thank you for sharing everything so far. I mean, I just feel like this is such powerful stuff. And I'm really grateful to be bringing this to people today with you. And I definitely, I would love to, have more conversations like this, because when you first said in the beginning even, it's crazy how taboo talking about sex is, when it is a part of our human experience. Everyone, like, you can't get away from it. You were born, and there has to be sex in order to be born. And everyone is born of a vagina, and the fact that people still can't speak about that, it's something that we need to talk more about, so we can gain more understanding and gain more like empathy and compassion for these experiences that we actually all share in. I think, like you said as well, we've all been hurt as children, and that doesn't mean that our parents are bad. I think it's like, again, even just with the word trauma, of course this word does get thrown around a lot and stuff, but at the end of the day, like, we all do have trauma, and that's nothing to be ashamed about. It's not like we don't have to feel broken because of that, like in this case, like, if we have sexual shame in a very innocent way, like we talk about like erotic innocence, but it's also, the shame is almost innocent in a sense, because it's not like the parents want to shame you. It's just like sometimes, a lot of times, it's a very natural reaction, like you said, again, it can be out of fear of being judged. Like for the parents, they have a lot of emotions that are arising that they don't understand because they weren't ever taught. And it's just this like generational cycle, as you also mentioned. I loved everything that you said, and I feel like it's just, I think a lot of women and myself, and this is something that we really connect on, and like I was also raised in a very religious household, and like sex and masturbation, these types of things were, very like made to be very sinful and very wrong, and I mean, sex wasn't like a forbidden topic in my household, but it was just, you have sex after you're married, and there's all these things, but like self pleasure, like that's wrong, like that's something you don't want to do, you don't want to explore that. And I think again, like in our kind of shared experience, like I went through, honestly most of my life not having a real connection to my sexual energy. I had lots of sex, but there wasn't a connection to my pelvis, there wasn't like a connection to pleasure, there wasn't a connection to my sexual energy or even my life force energy, which like that's like another aspect of it, is like our sexual energy, it is life force energy. Not only does it create life through sex, but it's also where our creativity lies, where our passion lies, where our drive lies, or even like you said, like rage, it's like these like deeper, more like lower, stronger emotions that we hold in our lower body. And I think it's so important that we start to rebuild that connection with our pelvis, so that we can feel union within ourselves, which is going to allow us to have like, I don't want to, so for lack of better words, better, but like more rich union with others, with our romantic partners, but even in our platonic relationships, when we feel more whole within ourselves. We are whole within ourselves, of course, but when we feel more whole, this is how we can have deeper connections with others, when we're able to show up more as our full authentic self. But it takes that time, and it takes that nourishment and that care, like you said, to bring attention to this, bring attention to this disconnect that most of us have within us, and be able to start to rebuild that connection.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that you shared that, like, the shame itself is innocent. And I feel like that's so incredibly true, because I think, especially, I have a lot of compassion for parents. I've worked with a lot of parents, and they're afraid when they hear this that they've done that in some way to their child. And it's kind of like part of the parenting contract is like, you will fuck up your kids. So
Yeah.
in some way or another, like there's like no way that you're not going to pass down some of your patterns towards them. But just that like remembrance that it's like, it is from an innocent place where I think a lot of the time parents are trying to nurture their child well. And in doing that, sometimes there's like a shame that gets passed down, right? Because shame is like, am I good? Am I enough? Am
Yes.
so there really is like an innocent quality to it that I was tuning into as you were speaking. And just, they do say that, just for anyone who's wondering that does have kids, that it's like, meeting your child in their eroticism and welcoming it, it's like the best thing that we could do, is just like kind of welcoming our child's energy. And I think that reminds me of just our relationship to ourselves. And like you said, like connecting more, it's like, how can we welcome more of our energy? And I think I lived in a paradigm of like, in this whole splitting, there's also like what's known as like a good bad split. So it's kind of like you learn that like the heart energy is good and the pelvic energy is bad, right? Like my rage is bad, my sex is bad. So underneath there's a fear that like I'm bad if I have that energy. And that can show up in all different areas of life. And I think something that helped me, it's like all of our energy is good, because it's just energy, right? So
Yeah.
it's like starting to welcome, like, whether it's fear, whether it's shame, whether it's, I don't know, guilt. It's like, it's all energy. And when you can start to, like, I don't know, welcome, accept, let it be there, then you can feel more of it. And I really agree with what you said. It's like learning more about ourselves so that we can feel more of our energy. I think that's one of the goals. It's like, and I really know that that's possible, because a lot of people have like depression, and I know for myself, I had a lot of depression in my life and a lot of like anxiety. And to me, it makes sense when you're, they say like depressed, it's like you're cut off from parts of yourself,
Yes.
right? If you're feeling really, really depressed, um, there's a way that I feel like you have to be missing some of your energy, because you don't have all of your energy, right? And I know it's more complicated than that, but connecting to that pelvis and connecting to like where you're not expressing yourself, where you're not feeling your aliveness, it's a powerful place to start.
Absolutely. And I think that, at least for my own self, because I've been on this like self-discovery, self-love, like healing journey, whatever you want to call it. I've been on it for so long. But one thing that I've realized over time is that all of this stuff takes time. And I don't just mean like it takes years of time. I mean, it takes time every day, like intentional time every day. Like, if for anyone out there who's kind of like, maybe they've tried this or they've tried that, and they're wondering, or maybe someone is really depressed, and you're kind of wondering, like, how do I get out of this? And
Yeah.
it just takes time. It takes intentional time, like even just a few minutes a day, to simply lay in bed and just feel what's going on inside your body, like feel what sensations are present, and ask questions to your body, and listen, and it takes time, and it takes practice, and or working with coaches like Sacha, or there's so many resources out there for people nowadays, and it's really cool. But I think that, yeah, it's just so important to acknowledge that it does take intentional time, and it can just be small little things every single day. But I think, like you said, giving space for feeling what's going on, for feeling our feelings, and again, like you were saying with depression, it's like, because I've definitely had moments of depression for sure, many times in my life, and it is just like it's just a deep disconnection, isn't it? Like, where you're so disconnected from yourself, you're so disconnected from your truth, you're disconnected from just the unity with everything. And because when we feel connected, we're literally connected to the energy of everything, and that lifts us up. That gives us that energy and gives us more spaciousness to feel more. Whereas when we're depressed, there's a disconnect there, and so we don't have access to all that energy, like you said. I really like the way that you explained that.
Yeah, that deep disconnection. And on a more spiritual level, I've been reflecting this week of like that over identification with our ego. And kind of like that seems to be something that a lot of us are in. It's like we feel like we're alone. I know that was a big part of my healing journey, was like I have an especially fucked up story. Like, I think there's a big buzzword around narcissism, and I feel like that narcissistic quality inside ourselves that like focuses, is it only about me? And we can be so hard on ourselves in that place. Like, and I know for me with sexual shame, if anyone is experiencing that, that's a particular flavor of like I can't talk to anyone about this. Like, I remember feeling like really it was like only me who had this, because like the nature of the privacy and the secrecy and the like depths of darkness that's embedded in our culture around sexuality. And so I think it's important to remember that exactly what you're saying. It's like you're actually not separate. And when we forget that, we think that we're like this, like we forget who we are, really. You know, my friend's like, you sound like Ram Dass this week, because I was thinking, I was like, but it's like when you remember, like I went to this all women's dance. And I had the most like profound, like transpersonal dance with this woman where I was thinking to myself, if someone's watching this, it probably looks like we're like making love, because we were just so intimate and so deep, and like it was beautiful, and it meant absolutely nothing. You know, there was no meaning attached to it. And she said at the end, because one woman shared, I feel jealous when I watch other women have deep connection. And I said, it's funny, my self-consciousness feels scared to cross people's boundaries. So I was just noticing how like our self-consciousness takes us out of connection, whether we're afraid of like getting too close, or you know, we have all these like self-consciousness that keeps us out of connection. And the woman who I shared the intimate dance with said that, you know, she really tries to practice like remembering that we're not who we think we are. You know, it's like we're not actually like this personality of me, and like we're just bodies. And then deeper than that, it's like we're actually souls that came here to be free, right? It's like we came, like we're this energy that came here to express itself, to connect, to share beautiful experiences, and to liberate ourselves. But I have been reflecting on like how that over identification with ourself and who we forget, like we forget what the fuck is going on, right? We're just like, oh, like me and my life and my problems. And I think because I've been going through this breakup, that's been like like this has been like the hardest month of my, like March was like eclipse season. I feel like a lot of people just went through so much, but in that suffering there's so much of like a self-focus, like what's going to happen to my life and this person and that, you know. And then you like have these moments of remembering the soul, and you're like, wow, that's why we're really here. And I think people are longing for that, like to have their energy and to feel like we've been talking about. It's like that inner union, which I think is like that deep okayness with all of your energy. It's like, I'm actually okay with my rage. I'm okay with my boundaries. I'm okay with my love. Like, and then we get to have that with like, I don't know, essentially anyone who wants to share that with us, even beyond romantic partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I love that you shared what that woman said, that, you know, like we have to realize that we're not who we think we are. I just, wow, that really landed for me. I'm just like, wow, that's such a relief, actually, you know, to realize, like, and exactly as you said, I mean, I've been in the same boat. Like, you know, I've been going through a strange situation for the last 8 months here in Thailand. And it has made me face a lot of stuff inside of me. But I had a big realization, I don't know, maybe like 2 months ago. And even though I realized it, I'm still not quite out of it. But I was like, wow, I'm really self-absorbed at the moment. You know, like I'm really just like all I can think about and talk about is just like my problems and like the things that I need to work on. And like I was just like really caught in this like just this very large loop of over analyzing and of like, you know, and under this guise, well, not under this guise, because like it is doing inner work and it is like doing the work, but I just like I was really, again, just self-absorbed in that, you know, like I wasn't. And because I was so self-absorbed in that, you know, I was disconnecting myself from others because I was so inwardly focused on like my problems that I need to, you know, that I need to work with. And so I love that because then I do have these beautiful moments when I do remember, like, what I am. You know, like I let go of the who am I and I come into the what am I, you know, which is a human being. A human being, which is a soul in this body and going through life and experiencing life. That's what I am, you know, as a human being. And like in those moments when I have that remembrance, it is liberation, you know, because then you realize that there's nothing to do. There's nothing to fix, there's nothing to change. It's just pure presence, you know, it's just pure being. And that is so liberating. And I think, like, you know, we spend it's actually quite interesting. What's coming up for me is like thinking about how much energy we spend suppressing our energy.
So much. That's been a topic today for my clients, because that's the defenses that we started with.
Yes.
Right? It's like we're afraid of our own energy because we got hurt. And it's almost like what came up in a session with a client today was like, it's like we think there's a boogie monster in the closet that if we really opened up would come out, and like there's nothing there.
Yes.
All that's there is your own energy, right? Like your fear, your rage, your sadness, but we're actually so afraid of what's inside of us. And there's that beautiful quote, I was reading it today. It was like, if you bring forth what's inside of you will save you. And if you keep what's inside of you, that will destroy you.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
So it's like bringing your energy out and which is a process, because I think for a lot of people it's really scary, but I think that on the topic of like shame and sexuality, it's like that it would probably be my biggest advice. And as you said, like you go into your internal world of like all this sort of narrative and just like starting to bring it out or asking someone, like, hey, I'm having this thing, that already starts like the healing process, because you're not self-isolating in shame.
Absolutely. And that's like one thing that I say all the time to clients and just in general is that shame thrives in the dark. You know, so the more that we keep our shame to ourselves, like the more that we keep that shame hidden, the more it grows, you know. But if we can just express it, which of course it is scary, but just like, you know, kind of coming back to the innocence of shame. Like we don't choose shame. You know, like it is something that happens to us when we're young. And it's, you know, it's a part of the human experience, I think, you know. I don't think there's anyone out there who's immune to feeling shame, you know. Obviously some of us have a lot more shame, and you know, I know for myself, like even though again I've been working on this for so many years, I still have shame, you know. I don't feel like shame will ever be gone from me. It's about learning to not reject the shame. It's about learning to, you know, accept and embrace that part and just say, it's okay, I have shame, you know, and I don't have to feel ashamed of the shame. And and this is why it's so important, like you said, you know, just get it out, like talk to someone about it, ask someone about it. And you know, if we can say, I'm ashamed of this, or like I'm ashamed of what I did here, or I'm ashamed of this part of myself, or wherever it is that we feel shame, by bringing it up, you know, we're processing that, we're allowing it space, and that allows the energy. Because again, even shame, it's just energy, you know. And we have these narratives in our heads, we have all these stories that are attached to it, which again, that feeds that energy, you know. But when we can express it, when we can talk about it and bring it to the surface, this allows that energy to physically move out of our bodies, you know. And this is the beauty of somatics, isn't it? Like where we can take our past experiences that we're holding on to in ourselves, in our nervous system, in our body, And through somatics, we're actually able to physically move that energy up and out, which clears space in our physical bodies, at least in my perception, for more love. You know, and for other energy, that more liberation, more love, more peace, more compassion, more joy, you know. And this is like kind of how I see it. Like all of these different energies, they all exist within us at all times. But when it comes to kind of like the lower frequency energies of shame and guilt and fear, the more that we hold that inside, it kind of takes up space, you know, and it keeps growing, where we're through somatics and through expression, through movement, these types of things, you know, we can release a lot of that energy and clear space for more love and more peace and more joy.
It's really incredible. I've felt it in myself, and I've seen it in other people, how when you have the courage, I think what you're saying is so true. It's like it's gonna feel like the opposite of what you want to do, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'll wait for the day that it feels easy, you know, to share or something, and it's like, no, it's not gonna feel necessarily good, because you've been doing the opposite thing, which is like holding in for so long, that in my experience it's been like really uncomfortable to start to bring stuff out. But it's true that like because it does manifest as physical blocks in the body. So, you know, I feel you can see people's splits, actually, you know how we're talking about the heart and pelvis split, and people are like physically, it starts to manifest in the body as like disconnection, there's like no feeling. A lot of people are like kind of like just head. And anyways, like, right, like it manifests as sort of these like blocks a lot of the time in the body, and through the process of like moving the energy, we can actually free up the energy that's stuck inside of us, which is so powerful and incredible. And I think what you're saying also of like, we can do that through love and not through pushing and over time. And to circle back of like, we keep forgetting like the truth, and then we remember. And I think what I'm focusing on right now in my personal life is like, can I actually love myself in the places where I forget? You know, where I'm like so obsessed with my problem, or, you know, like whatever, like caught in old patterns, because like we are human, we're not like perfect, we're not always remembering that we're souls and we're connected to everything, because we're not enlightened. So it's like just being like, oh yeah, okay, I'm forgetting again. But like, I think what I'm realizing is like, it's like, oh, the actual work is like loving and accepting yourself in those moments.
Yes.
Because it's easy to love and accept ourselves when we're in the moments of like bliss and unity, and but in the moments of like, I'm stuck, or I feel, you know, lost or scared, or that's like, I think the real work. And I said, like with tapping, right, the statement is like, even though I'm feeling this, I choose to love and accept myself.
Yeah.
And I've said this week, like, you know, I've been tapping since I was a kid, but it's like, I actually think it's going to take my whole lifetime to like get that. It's like, whatever I'm feeling, I can love and accept myself. Like, can you imagine we actually got that?
Yeah.
Then it would be so much easier. But we're often, you know, not liking what we're feeling, in resistance to what we're feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the point that you made when it comes to sharing shame, and when it comes to sharing these things, that it's uncomfortable, you know? And this is, I think this is like a lot of work that we have to do as humans, is like, how can we get comfortable with the uncomfortable, you know? And this goes out to like every area of our life, like anything in our life that makes us uncomfortable. Well, not anything, obviously, because like abuse, like there's loads of things that make us uncomfortable, and we need to like observe that discomfort and figure out, what is this discomfort telling me? But I think even with that, we still need to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, because of the fact that I feel like that discomfort is a message.
Yeah.
And so if we can learn to not be so afraid of discomfort, when that discomfort arises, we can have a conversation with it and say, what is this discomfort telling me right now? You know, and I think that's like a big part of it, is being able to recognize that all of our emotions, all of the emotions, which are just energy, as you said, there's no like good or bad, right or wrong. It's just energy. And the way that I always like to talk about it kind of is that it's just our bodies telling us something. You know, that's it. And it's actually like on a well, I don't want to get this wrong, but just like, you know, our emotions, like they're electrical charges. You know, there's little signals, like little electrical things happening in our brains and in our bodies in every moment, and our bodies are just listening and receiving and just responding to everything that's happening in every present moment. You know, and then that goes into the mind, and this is where the stories come and the narratives come, and this is where we forget, is, you know, up here, because the heart always remembers.
Totally.
The heart is always living in the present moment. It remembers everything. You know, it's in our mind that we forget when we come out of the body, and we're living up here in the head. This is where our forgetfulness happens. This is how I see it, anyways. You know, this is my personal how I've come to understand it. But I think like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable allows us to have more compassion for ourselves, and to kind of lean into that love and acceptance no matter what we're experiencing. And I found for myself that this reduces a lot of suffering. You know, I still am experiencing plenty of pain. I'm still experiencing all of the emotions and all of the experiences, but I'm not suffering through it so much, because I'm understanding that it's just part of it. It's just part of the process, or part of the experience, or part of my path, or whatever you want to say. It's all just part of it. And the more that I can be comfortable to just face the discomfort, the less suffering it is, you know, and the more I can move through it. Maybe not easy, you know, it's still not easy, and it's not like without pain, but it makes it a little bit more okay, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that you said it's where the suffering comes from, because that's been the big message of this week. It's just like, oh, that false identification with our mental narratives that I feel like most of us is where we get stuck. You know, I'm not good enough, or something's wrong with me, or I'm broken, or I'm never gonna get what I want, like, and so when we like identify like that's who I am, there's a lot of suffering there. Yeah. And we can keep remembering to come back into the body, which I believe both of us is our work is around that. And as you said, when you can just be with the sensations, that's a lot of what tapping is about. It's like, okay, like the fear, what is it? People say, I'm an anxious person. Again, you're identifying with, what's the anxiety? Like, what is that like in this moment? What is the sensation like? And then with tapping, I think people find it so powerful, because in just a few minutes, you can shift the sensations. So it's kind of like you're disidentifying with the mental narrative, you're getting in touch with the body and the sensations, and then you can allow the energy to move through the body. We touched like all different topics today. I feel like we're gonna have to have a couple more lives. But
oh, absolutely. Well, let's definitely, because I'm checking the time now, and so I know that we do have to hop off. But thank you.
Timing.
Thank you so much for being here with me now, and sharing all of your wisdom, and sharing these beautiful truths with everyone. And yeah, I'm absolutely,
Yes,
let's definitely do a part 2. Really
yeah,
excited
definitely.
about that.
There's
And
more, and maybe people's questions they might have about what we were talking about, and we can share more.
yeah, exactly. And next time, like, we'll, we kind of planned this a little short notice, but next time we
Yes.
can like let people know a little bit more in advance, and we can give people a chance to ask questions and things like that. If they can watch part 1, have some questions, and we can answer that in part 2. I would absolutely love that.
Awesome. So
And I
nice to
see,
be
I
with
see
you.
Steph.
Steph is here.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Another farm member.
Yeah, another member. Such wild times. It was a really cool
I know.
experience. I highly
Such a
recommend
different
work
lifetime.
exchange for people. Travel the world and do
Oh
work
yeah.
exchange.
Oh,
It's really cool.
so I want to do it again, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks,
All
Jess.
right,
We'll chat
darling.
again soon. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good evening. Enjoy your next session. Bye-bye.
Bye.